Hi, vacation rental owner or manager. Today I'm breaking down exactly what I buy at Target for your STR business, because some of it will actually move the needle for you, some of it won't. Hi, vacation rental owner. Welcome to the Step Up Your STR podcast, which is all about specialized decorating so that you can make max revenue from your business. I'm Kara Shimizu, and I've designed dozens of STRs, probably about 50 now, and they all charge in the top 10% of their area competitors and make up to 153% more after working with me. Now, if you've wondered what actually moves the needle in your Airbnb business, not what looks cute, not just what's trendy, but what actually helps you get more clicks and bookings and revenue, I'm hoping that this episode will be a good guide for you, because today I am breaking down exactly what I buy at Target for STRs. I really like Target. Not everything, not the random seasonal stuff for STRs, not those things in the aisle where you think, oh, this is kind of cute. But I am talking about the specific items that I use again and again in STRs that do perform well. And as a bonus, I will put a link in the description to a PDF that links to the exact items I've bought multiple times for STRs. And you can go buy those items as well. No affiliation. I just want you to have access to that good resource. Now, here's a bigger point I want you to understand as you listen. This isn't just about Target. It's about knowing what to buy anywhere that will actually increase your revenue. Because how your STR looks determines how much money it makes. And most people are out here wasting money on decor that does not help them get more revenue from their STR. So I'm going to walk you through what I actually use and why. Now, before we get into the exact Target items, let's first talk briefly about something that most people overlook, and that is to choose items that don't break. This is one of the biggest differences between decorating your own home and designing a vacation rental. Because in your home, you're typically pretty careful, but in a rental, people are not. You have guests coming in and out, cleaners moving around quickly, luggage being dragged around, set down, kids, accidents that happen, things get knocked over, things fall, and things break. And every time something breaks, it costs you in money and time and consistency in your space. So I do design very intentionally around that. I actively avoid overly fragile materials whenever possible, especially things like glass or ceramic lamps, delicate ceramic accessories, anything that's top heavy and easy to tip. And instead I lean into fabric, things made out of metal or resin, stone, woven materials like rattan, because those materials are more forgiving than ceramic, than glass. They can handle real life use. And here's the key. If you want to be smart about making money through design, durability has to be a part of your strategy. Because if your space consistently looks slightly off between guest stays because something has broken, there's something missing, or you have a mismatched replacement, that shows up in your reviews and it'll show up in your photos over time, and it will impact your revenue. So yes, your space should look beautiful, but it also needs to hold up. And when you start choosing items that are both visually strong and physically durable, practical, that's when your design actually becomes scalable. Now, let's get into those specific items from Target that I get for STRs that help them make more revenue. Let's start with a big one, rugs. If you have a hard surface for flooring, like wood, LVP, stone, tile, if you're not investing in rugs, your listing is probably underperforming. And I don't mean just throwing down any rug. I'm very specific about this. Rugs are really important. And at Target, I usually buy rugs from their third-party sellers, like brands like Safavia or New Loom. And here's why. First, they are nice quality and they photograph beautifully. A good rug will ground your space. It tells the camera where the room starts and stops. It creates contrast and depth and softness underfoot and structure. Without a rug, on the other hand, your space it will visually kind of awkwardly float in a photo. It feels unfinished and it feels cheaper, actually, even if everything else is nice. Secondly, rugs add pattern without overwhelming a space. And this is huge for STRs. You don't want to rely only on furniture for visual interest. That's expensive. Rugs are actually a really cost-effective way to bring in personality. And third, this is a big one, rugs help define zones, especially in an open concept layout, where you have the kitchen and the dining area and the entry and the living room, all of that happening in one space. If you put a rug in the living room, you know it's a living room. If you put a rug to designate the dining space, that's definitely a dining area. It makes things clear and just gives clarity to a room. You're telling the guest, this is how to experience this space. And that clarity translates into better photos and better bookings. Now, I need to add here when not to use rugs, and that is if you are specifically designing for a place where older people will be coming, like a lot of family reunions, or a space that's just designated for older folks, because rugs can be a tripping hazard. Typically, they're not. For a lot of older folks, they're not. But if your space is geared for them, I honestly would avoid rugs in that situation and just do the best that you have with furniture. All right, the next item to get from Target are pillows from the Threshold Studio McGee line. These pillows are one of my go-tos. And here's why I keep coming back to them. They look more expensive than they are. That is really a slam dunk when it comes to STR design. When your goal is not to spend the most money, it's to create the highest perceived value. And Studio McGee pillows do that really well. You get texture, subtle patterns, you get that slightly elevated designer look without having to source from 5 different higher end places. And pillows are just a really fast way to change the entire feel of a room. Because if you have a flat sofa, you can add some pillows really strategically and it looks styled. If you have a basic bed, you can add some decorative pillows and now it looks like a really beautiful stay. Now here's a key. Do not just throw random piles of pillows on there. You want variation in size, texture, and pattern. And usually I'm sticking to a really controlled color palette, so it feels cohesive in photos. So keep that in mind. Let's next move to art. I like the Studio McGee art as well as pillows. Here I'm also leaning into Studio McGee. Now, art in general is one of the biggest missed opportunities that I see in STRs. People either don't use art at all, or they use art that's way too small, or they use something super generic that doesn't add style to the space. Studio McGee art at Target is one of my go-tos because it hits a really important balance. It's often neutral enough to appeal to a wide audience, but still definitely interesting enough to elevate the space. Now here's the bigger principle. Your walls are prime real estate for design. Your listing photos are doing the selling before anyone reads a word of that listing. So what's on your walls matters. Large-scale art especially makes a wonderful difference. It fills a space, it creates a focal point, and it makes your listing feel intentional. And always intentional art does read as higher value. Next, stems and faux greenery from Hearth and Hand. Now, Hearth and Hand is design made specifically for Target by Joanna Gaines from Magnolia, the Magnolia brand. This is one of my favorite categories because it's such an easy win. The stems from that brand are surprisingly good, and I use them constantly for styling. Empty surfaces don't photograph well. And clutter does not photograph well either. So you need a middle ground, something that adds life without adding any chaos. And that's where stems and full greenery can come in. You put them in a vase and done. They give you height, texture, and a natural element that softens the space. And they're so flexible. You can use them in so many places, like dining tables, nightstands, bathroom counters, entry tables, for sure the coffee table. They are one of the simplest ways to make a space feel finished. And remember, you can find the specific stems and other items that I love to buy from Target, those specific links in the PDF in the description. Okay, here's one specific piece that I love. It's a tall brass vase. This is one of those pieces that does way more than you think. Because when you're styling a space, especially for photos, you need height variation. Everything cannot sit low. That looks boring. You need something that draws the eye upward and creates contrast and adds a little bit of shine and glam. And that's exactly what this vase does. It actually comes in two sizes, a shorter size and a taller size. I use the taller size way more often. It's lovely, it's metallic, it's high quality, and it works perfectly with the stems that we just talked about. Here's why I specifically like this one for STRs. It's metal. It isn't glass, which means it's far less likely to ever break when guests are moving around or tip it over, cleaning is happening, things just get bumped. This vase also has that warm, beautiful brass tone that reads as expensive on camera. So at the time of recording this in spring of 2026, it's only $15. And for $15, you're getting height, contrast, light reflection, and durability. And that's an amazing combination for only $15. This is a perfect example of how I think about decor, actually. Not just what looks good, but does this perform well in a rental over a long period of time? Next, let's move into lamps. Lighting is one of the most underrated elements in STR design, and if you've listened to me a few times, you've probably heard that before. It directly impacts how your photos look, which means lighting directly impacts your revenue. At Target, I often go for lamps from third-party sellers, actually, especially in materials that we've mentioned before, metal, resin, stone, because they feel nice and substantial. They don't look cheap. They add weight and presence to a space. Now, here's something that a lot of people miss. Overhead lighting alone is not enough. Please don't just rely on your overhead light. It creates harsh shadows. It flattens the room. It makes everything feel less inviting, and it can make people look and actually feel kind of sickly. Adding lamps, on the other hand, will create layers of beautiful, soft light. Layered light will lead to better photos, which lead to clicks, which lead to bookings, which lead to revenue. That is the chain reaction that you want. So go for good, large, substantial lamps. Next, mirrors. Mirrors are great at Target, and if you're not using them strategically, you are leaving money on the table. Mirrors do two very important things. They make a space feel bigger, and they reflect light. When a person sees a beautiful light and a place that feels big in an online photo, like on Airbnb.com, that is what they want. They want a big space that feels clean and bright and is functional for them. These things are critical for listing photos if you want to do your best. So if you're working with a smaller room, a darker space, or a place that has lower ceilings, remember that a well-placed mirror can completely change how that room feels on camera. Okay, I'm not necessarily talking about tiny mirrors, but I'm leaning towards those large-scale mirrors. So mirrors that actually can lean on the floor and oversized wall mirrors. You need to kind of put those on the floor out of the walkway so that they don't get broken as easily. But these definitely have presence and will go a long way to elevating how your space looks. Because again, your goal is not just to decorate, it's to create a space that performs. All right, the next item I love to buy at Target are quick dry towels. This is very practical and of course important because towels directly touch a person's skin, so that it's really important that they feel good. Quick dry towels from Target are the ones that are ribbed. Those are the ones that I recommend. They look high end, they look like they're from a spa, and I found that these ribbed towels get stolen less often than other standard towels. These are one of those behind the scenes items that matters more than people think. Because yes, guest experience matters. These towels photograph cleanly, they hold up over time, and they're easy to maintain between guests, which matters if you're turning over your unit frequently. When something is both functional and visually clean, that's a definite win. Let's quickly talk about what I don't buy at Target. Now, before you go and start adding everything to your cart, because that can be a lot of fun, there are a few categories that I intentionally avoid at Target, because this isn't about what looks good in the store. It's about what performs well for you to make more revenue. First, avoid small scale furniture in general. A lot of Target furniture, especially from their threshold line, is designed for smaller spaces. And this can be okay if you have a small scale apartment. But for most spaces, they are normal size, for people living in the 21st century. That means the proportions are often off for STRs if you buy this furniture from Target. The small chairs feel too small. Seating feels low. And on camera, they can actually read even smaller. Second, I avoid low-cost storage furniture from Target. Now, this is where you'll see a lot of MDF and veneer. MDF stands for medium density fiberboard, and it can break and chip easily. It can look good at first, but it will not hold up to heavy use. The drawers will loosen, surfaces wear down. Like I said, it chips and cracks and breaks, and your space quickly starts to feel worn. Third, fragile ceramic and breakable pieces. This is really common at Target. Ceramic and glass, especially accessories. They tend to be too small, for one thing, and they break. And once they break, you're replacing them typically with mismatched pieces, and that will slowly degrade your design and your guest experience. So, I want you to remember this filter. Will this still look good after dozens of guest stays? You're not looking at just one day. Now let's pull all this together. I want you to zoom out for a second because this is the most important part of the episode. None of these items matter on their own. A rug alone won't fix your listing. Pillows alone won't fix your listing. Even beautiful art alone won't fix your listing. It's the combination. It's how these pieces work together to create a cohesive look, a strong first impression, and ultimately a space that photographs well so that you can sell that stay and make revenue. That's what your listing photos are. Remember, they are your first sales conversation. Guests decide before they read anything on the listing. Your decor has to do that selling for you. All right, I think the real takeaway here is that you don't need a massive budget. You can shop at Target confidently and buy amazing items that will improve your business. You definitely don't need custom furniture. You don't need to overcomplicate this, but you do need a plan because good furniture deals are costly when there's no design plan, and I see it all the time. People buy random things, hoping it'll come together, and then they wonder why their listing isn't performing. Really, my heart goes out to those owners. It's a really hard place to be in. I'm hoping that what I have given you today is not just a shopping list like you can find in that PDF in the description, but I hope what I've given you is a strategy, because these items from Target can elevate your space visually, photograph well, and contribute to a higher performing listing. Now, if you're listening to this or watching this and you're thinking, okay, I bought the stuff, but my place still isn't performing, That's where I can come in for you, because successful STR decor is different from regular decorating. And most people are guessing how to decorate. It's normal. I have found that decorating is not an innate skill. It's a learned skill. And most people are guessing about how to do decorating. If you're one of those people, that is okay. You're in good company, because design is not easy. And even after all these years of being a designer, putting a space together can still be a real puzzle. So if you want your space to actually make more money, not just look better, I can help you do that, whether that's through a full redesign or an e-design where I create the plan and you can implement it. That goal of mine is always the same. I want to get you a space that stands out, gets clicks and bookings, and ultimately earns you more revenue. And if you get to visit there sometimes and use your property, it will also be a space that you love to stay in. So if you're ready for that, go ahead and book a call. I will leave my contact info in the description. If you're listening and you just want to go directly there, it's at vrdecor.co/contact. That's VR as in vacation rental decor.co/contact. Let's look at your space together and figure out what's actually going to move the needle. I would love to be a resource for you. Thank you so much for listening. I have enjoyed this episode. It's been a minute since I've been able to talk with you. So much design work going on, but it's great to be here. And I look forward to talking again next time.